My apologies, guys. I'm a little groggy. I've been up since 6 in the morning trying to get Avengers tickets. But if you guys don't remember, after all the craze that is the brand new... Man, I feel bad. I feel bad for this movie. Because the fucking ticket sales for another bigger movie overshadows the release of the actual movie. Wow. But in case you guys didn't know, we did get a video game adaptation coming out this weekend. It is for the movie Tomb Raider. However, being that we've had Tomb Raider movies before with Angelina Jolie and they didn't exactly pan out the way people were really expecting to, people thought, you know what, at least the people in the movie industry thought, you know what, they were able to really bring a very much more realistic and nuanced take on Lara Croft. Can we do the same on the movie perspective? Somebody came up with a bright idea. Somebody who actually played the fucking game thought, you know what? Let's try. Let's try one more time. Let's try to get the right talent. I feel like there could be a renaissance of brand new video game movies. If superhero movies got even better with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and even movies from DC like Wonder Woman and even Justice League was enjoyable to a certain extent, why can't video game movies? Can we finally break the bad video game movie curse? And then Assassin's Creed came out. And we're like, no. No. So my guard was completely up going into Tomb Raider, but then I started hearing word of mouth saying that it's actually rather enjoyable, so I thought, okay, let's take a peek at it, at what it is that maybe Tomb Raider could maybe make itself different from these other video game movies that just completely missed the mark. And right from the get-go, within the opening first minutes of the film, you can tell that whoever wrote and directed this movie played the fucking game. And by the game, I don't just mean, they probably did play the original Tomb Raider games from the 90s, where, yeah, she had the double pistols, she had the pointy boobs, and it was all about the very over-the-top, but yet really chaotically fun nature of the game. But also knew that Tomb Raider was a staple within the video game genre and was a cultural phenomenon, whether it be for the better or for the worse, with all the controversy surrounding sexual representation of women in video games and how that earlier version of Lara Croft in those Tomb Raider games was used as an argument for that. So he or she needed to pay attention to the new reboot that took the character in a much more realistic approach, and that's essentially what this movie is based upon. It kind of does some homage, little Easter eggs to that original type of Tomb Raider, but at the same time, it's a very straightforward and almost to a T adaptation of the 2013 reboot of the Tomb Raider video game, with a much more realistic Lara Croft going around doing her own thing, but at the same time, she unveils a secret past relating to not only her father, but also the research that her father was doing with this tomb of this woman, Japanese mythology named Himiko, and exactly what type of mystery qualities surround her, and also this other malevolent force trying to reach this tomb before he does. And so Lara takes it upon herself to finish what her father started. That's the premise for the 2013 video game. And that's exactly the premise for the 2018 movie here. So I was actually rather pleasantly surprised to see how much they took of that new game, to where the plot is pretty much the same, the character natures are exactly the same, and thankfully, what was so easy to botch about this film that the movie gets right from the get-go is that Lara Croft herself, Laura, however you pronounce her name, is very, very likable. Right from the get-go, you like this woman, and she's charismatic, she wins you over, and to the T, I was thinking to myself, you know, even if the plot for this movie turns out to be shit, or it turns out to follow the game a little too closely to where certain elements of the game can only work in the game and not necessarily in a movie, which unfortunately does transpire as the movie progresses, at least I can rely on Vikander's performance as the character to really keep me a little grounded and make me, you know what, I like you enough that I'm willing to kind of overthrow some of the little hurdles that I have to get through, because the movie does take some silly approaches and silly little points from the game that can only work in the game, because there's certain things that happen in the game that I just remember distinctly that I look at and go, yeah, she should have died so much long ago. She should have broken some bones or had some much more worse injuries. And there's a reason for why that game is actually rated M as opposed to the PG-13 movie here, is because in the game they were not afraid to shy away from some really grotesque violence, especially when you do get a game over and you witness Lara's death animatics. Here, however, because they know that it's a video game, it's a blockbuster, and they have to appeal to bigger audiences, they have to keep it PG-13, and so there's certain things that they kind of numbed, and I was like, oh, I longed for that visceral touch that new reboot was able to strike, that made me go, oh shit's getting real. Here, it's not so much there, but it's because Vikander is able to do something with the Lara Croft character. I was able to kind of overlook some of the silliness that would happen here and there, especially when certain sequences would happen and the A-Team mentality would be approached. If you guys are familiar with the A-Team TV show from like the late 70s, early 80s, where people would get shot and somehow no bullet would hit them whatsoever, that would happen from time to time here in this movie. Even though there were a couple of shots where they're like, well, I guess we gotta show our teeth ever so often, that red shirt right there gets shot and a little bit of blood comes out. But besides that, we can't have it too much. Can't go overboard. So Lara Croft being a likable character that attaches you to the movie with her personality, check. The movie plot following the game, actually not even just the movie plot, but the overall movie, down to even the color palette, the way Lara is dressed, because that's not super sexualized, but at the same time it makes sense for her to be dressed, and the way she maneuvers around the island, and the action sequences and the set pieces that are mirroring the game almost to the smallest detail, check. But maybe a little too much. This is where the little element of adapting a video game too much like the video game can maybe work against the movie slightly, at least from a gamer's perspective. I think it's no secret that I'm a heavy gamer. I'm a religious gamer. I feel like I need to clock in anywhere between 2 to 3 hours a day of a video game. Doesn't matter which console, doesn't matter what type of game. I need to be playing something. It's like my yoga. It's like my coffee, besides having actual coffee. And so when a movie that's not so much of a interactive experience, it's much more of a passive experience that you're just watching this instead of actually playing it and actually interacting with it, it's a little difficult to really attach myself to the movie when I know that there's a game out there that's just like this and I can actually play it. And I found myself feeling that a lot frequently throughout this film. And part of me wants to say that that's a good thing for the film, for people who don't normally like to play an awful lot of video games or don't have the time for it, and they could just watch this instead of, going on YouTube and looking up the cinematics strung together. They could go and check this out with real people, and it's a good pastime for them. For me, it was a good pastime. It was an enjoyable way to kind of experience a movie that felt faithful to the source material, but at the same time, it was just a little too pristine in its adaptation that I'm like, yeah, that action sequence with her jumping on that plane, it's in the game. And in the game, it's a little bit more tense because I'm actually controlling Lara and actually feeling like I could die at any second. Especially when, again, like I mentioned before, the death animatics are very visceral. There's just an element there that cannot be replicated within the movie because the movie is just passive. I'm just watching it. So it's cool for people who don't normally like to play video games. For me, on the other hand, it's like, well, I could be at home playing this. There's even a moment in the movie where it bangs you over the head one after another with references to this new 2013 game where I'm like, oh, that's from the game, that's from the game, from the game. But there's no breathing room, there's no connective tissue that is different from the game, but it's not significant enough for me to look at it and go, oh, that's different than any other blockbuster movie. Like, it follows similar beats that we've seen in other blockbuster movies before. Does them well, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I've seen them before. However, there's one element that I'll have to give him an awful lot of credit for. I don't want to mention it because it is a little bit of a spoiler. It wasn't in the trailers, it wasn't in the marketing material, so I'm like, alright, I better not spoil this. But there's something that they do that's different from the games. There's something that's actually rather concrete in the games. Here, they actually take some liberty with it and change it around. And even though it ends in a very typical and predictable way, I still have to give them credit for going through with something that was different than the game. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is what a video game movie should do. Adapt from the source material, be faithful to the source material, but divulge into something that I know I'm not going to get from the game. Which is why, even though this is not exactly the most awesome video game adaptation ever, and I guess I'm kind of ruining my verdict here for the game, for the movie itself before I jump into some other details, the next great video game movie that's not just going to be the best video game movie adaptation, but it's also going to be a great significant movie, period, is going to be a movie that's based on a video game, but it extrapolates from the game and expands upon it even more than the game even did on its own. And most of the time, that's probably going to be on a game that doesn't have a story. I hear there's going to be a movie based on the Division game, and I feel like that could have potential, because there's no exact significant character. It's a multiplayer-only game. There is a little bit of a story, but there's no beginning and middle end to the story. It's just like a premise. So they could do that and expand upon it and actually build a narrative. And I'm like, you know what? If you get the right people behind it, that could actually be a great movie. Not just a great video game movie, but a great movie, period. And Tomb Raider, I feel like it's getting there. It's not quite there, but I appreciate for taking the first step with this element that they kind of diverted away from the game and actually made it kind of its own here within the movie. And it added an enjoyable quality between two particular characters that I looked at, and I'm like, I enjoy you guys. It's too bad that I know where this is going, but I enjoy the two of you within the scene and kind of being charismatic with one another. And good job on that. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same thing about other characters within this movie, because the majority of the supporting characters, again, they're not bad, but they're archetypes, they're traditional, they're just the same things they've seen before. Lara has a friend, the captain that helps her get to the island. He's cool, he's likable, but he doesn't do anything big or significant or unique in a sense that makes me remember him after the credits. And the same could be said, unfortunately, about our main villain, played by Walter Goggins. Vogel is his name, and the introductory scene to this character made me think that, ooh, we might have something here for a villain. Cool. He's got some details that I think I can latch on to. But quickly that disappears right away. He becomes a very routine villain, to the point where I feel like Goggins just lost inspiration and he just started sleepwalking through his scenes, where he's just archetypal villain, and I didn't care for him whether or not he got what he wanted or he didn't whatsoever. And they do something at the end that also follows the video games, but I kind of wish I would have left it for like at least part of it should have been teased here, and then another part of it should have been saved for like the first act or so of that second movie, because I thought they were kind of tripping over themselves a little bit with the Easter eggs and with the little dun 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 type of moments towards the end, where I'm like, okay, you gotta save that. Don't blow your load too early. But I still found myself thinking, yeah, I still enjoyed it. I saw some bad reviews for this movie, and I feel like those people were just a little too much on the gamer side, to where they thought, oh, I could just play this. But I tried to be fair, and I did find myself liking Lara Croft very well in this movie. And even though I liked her in the game as well, that version of the character voiced by Camilla Huntington, I think her last name, or her first name's Camilla, but I can't remember her last name. But the actress who played Lara Croft in the new rebooted version of the games, really liked her journey there. They even did some things here in the movie that were taken from that game, although I do feel like they were a little bit more emotional heavy in the game, because they were able to do again with some more stuff related to that M rating, and that kind of took away from it here in the PG-13 rating for the movie. But still, the fact that the filmmakers were able to pay attention to those details and not take advantage of them, not take them for granted, and at the same time being faithful to the source material in a way that I haven't seen a video game movie do in a very long time, it's actually kind of refreshing. And serving as the anchor is Vikinder's performance as Lara Croft, who's very likable, very charismatic, and makes me want to go on some more Tomb Raider adventures with her. And even the color palette, despite wanting to have a control in my hand and hitting that quick time event, there's still something appreciative about how accurate some of these visuals are, to where I'm like, huh, okay, this is kind of cool. It doesn't blow me away, but it's cool to see that somebody is paying attention. And I feel like we're on the right steps to delivering that great, awesome video game movie. Tomb Raider's not 100% there yet, but it's a really cool and faithful start. So I'm going to be giving Tomb Raider a very passable, very concrete 7 out of 10. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I know that this went on a little too long, but that's only because this being a video game movie and being a hardcore gamer that I am, I think that there's actually enough here to kind of pick apart and compare that if time permits and I'm able to get to it, maybe I'll do myself a spoiler video for this movie, because there's some things here and there that I can look at and go, huh, I can maybe talk about that for a good 15-20 minutes. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to see that. Only you guys can then therefore dictate whether or not that comes true. And also support the video by hitting the like and share button down below. But before you do that, please let me know in the comments what you guys thought of the Tomb Raider movie. Do you think it was faithful to the video game? Do you think it was a little too much like the video game? Or do you think it was the perfect balance to deliver a very entertaining popcorn flick? whatever your thoughts may be, let me know them in the comments, and make sure to support the channel by hitting the subscribe button down below. Until next time, guys, I'll see you all later. Pressing the same punch buttons or doing the same combos over and over, eventually it wears out thin, especially when you go through like 5 or 6 waves of enemies and you don't exactly know when the level's going to end. It starts to get a little infuriating. Did I die? Oh, wow, I wasn't even paying attention to my health. Goodness gracious. Oh, for that fucking sake.